Alrighty, here we go, about to record this thing. This thing. What isn't a thing? Can you think of something that isn't a thing? And that's how we will begin this recording. Today, this was written on Saturday the 4th of November 2023 at 9:52 a.m. I guess that was when it was finished, so then it was logged in the Microsoft OneNote app where I do most of my writing. And because I guess the cool thing about it is that once you write it and save it, it's simply stored upon the cloud and therefore can always be accessed, even if I lose my phone or whatever other technological device means by which I write upon. So here we go. All unnecessary jargon aside, it's time for me to start actually reading what I wrote on Saturday the 4th of November 2023 at 9:52 a.m. Here goes. We are often encouraged by those in our midst to cultivate a genuine sense of empathy and compassion for people in parts of the world who are enduring and undergoing terrible suffering and hardships such as famine, poverty, war, etc. And rightly so. People who are unwillingly subjected to and forced to endure such extreme and inhumane circumstances, which often can only be rationally understood as plain bad luck or as having been dealt a cruel hand by the fates, experience suffering of such an unfathomable depth that most people simply cannot and will not allow themselves even to consider what such horrific conditions would actually be like. Most people cannot allow themselves to tolerate the mere thought, let alone truly imagine for themselves what the experience of such diabolical circumstances would be like were they to be catastrophically plunged into a life of such inhumane suffering. This is assumed to be due to the human instinct for self-preservation, the innate human urge to seek the avoidance of pain, even painful thoughts, and to have all essential, fundamental, basic survival needs satisfied, the attainment of pleasure, and the keeping, I guess, of a pleasurable state, at least, of being. This inability to allow ourselves even to contemplate or envision the horrible reality of enduring extreme suffering due to the painful feelings and mental images which might be evoked within us as a consequence is understandable, is it not? Of course we wouldn't want to have to bear the dreadful thought of being subjected to such horrific circumstances. Why would we? Yet we are encouraged to do so as a means of increasing compassion and empathy, as well as fostering a communal sense of generosity in our, at least from the third world, sort of blessed perspective. Those of us in the third world who are, and so who might be able or have the means to be able to be generous, donate, and such things to people who are in such horrendous circumstances. The intentions of those who advocate for and encourage the general public to cultivate such sentiments and attitudes towards their fellow human beings, especially those who become entrapped in a nightmarish daily struggle for survival, seems totally reasonable and an appropriate way to approach these major global issues by fostering altruism and promoting philanthropic behavior among those fortunate enough to be able to donate or contribute in some way towards some kind of positive future resolution, as well as allowing these fortunate people the opportunity to make a positive impact and not feel helpless watching these issues unfold across the world. This collective attitude also assists in uniting the more wealthy nations and communities with the countries who are in crisis, which at least promotes healthy levels of trust and respect cross-culturally. This seems like the right way to approach responding to global crises when they arise within low socioeconomic regions or in countries struggling to access critical resources or whatever else they might require as a means of protecting their citizens and safely navigating the particular circumstances which have become dangerous and or life-threatening. In a hypothetical scenario, let's pretend you're a citizen of a nation like Australia and you earn a yearly salary somewhere in the range of $80,000 to $100,000. You're quite comfortable, super rich in comparison to the disparity of wealth distribution per capita pertaining to global population. You'd be in the top the top 1.1 of the first percentile, actually. And you could afford to at least donate or assist financially in an affordable way, which would hardly leave a dent in your budget, yet could save the lives of, say, 20 people on the other side of the world. Does this, to you, seem to suggest that perhaps when one has attained a certain level of financial security, they should be encouraged, if they are not doing so already, to take responsibility, even if, and maybe encouraged to conceive of it as their responsibility, and seek to assist their fellow human beings in whatever way they feasibly can? It's a fair question. Especially, of course, in a scenario where they could genuinely be of help and ease the suffering of people experiencing some severe humanitarian crisis overseas. On the other end of the spectrum, has anyone ever truly or seriously considered, and this may seem controversial at first, cultivating empathy and compassion, empathy being the ability to imagine and understand the experience of someone other than your own, not only for the poorest of the poor and those who are suffering, but for the people who have achieved the highest levels of power amongst all of humanity. These are the people who hold the greatest ability to influence, persuade, coerce, manipulate, and control the vast masses of human beings across the world due to their having attained enormous levels of power, and those who attain these enormous levels of power are, undoubtedly, the people who reach the highest levels of monetary wealth and who are perched high atop the throne of the global economic hierarchy, the apex predators of the financial sphere. We live in a world in which everything has its price and anything can be bought or sold. Understanding this clearly necessitates the obvious reasoning of the assumption that whoever sits atop the monetary pyramid and has the greatest wealth and economic status in comparison to all others will therefore hold the highest level of power. To empathize with a person who has attained a level of power greater than any other individual on the planet is to genuinely attempt to understand and conceive for oneself what it truly would be like to be that individual who has amassed a degree of power surpassing that of all other people in the world. If one human being could ever come close to acquiring a capacity for power resembling that of a god, it would be this person. That is how much influence and impact a person at the pinnacle of individual financial wealth really is able to exert over and upon whoever and whatever they decide to. What the majority of ordinary individual citizens who work and strive day after day for their comparatively minuscule earnings, when placed in comparison to those at the top of the global monetary food chain, essentially do is combine and coexist as an army of low-ranking pawns within a global workforce. The totality of labour and the unceasing engagement of this global economic army combined comprises the complete expenditure of effort required to maintain the integrity of what makes up the global economic and monetary system, upon which the value of all things in this world hinge, rely, and, dare it be said, are banked upon. Can anyone who truly attempts to empathize, the ability, again, to imagine and understand the experience of someone other than your own, with what it must feel like to experience life as the richest and most powerful human being on the planet, really convince themselves that they would not also fall prey to selfishness, competitiveness, to earn more and more and outlast all others seeking greater financial property? Could you really imagine yourself, after having spent an entire lifetime competitively amassing greater and greater wealth, addictively and tenaciously taking whatever risks may be required for you to amass such a gigantic fortune, to then, once you'd arrived at the staggeringly powerful position as the richest person in the world, all of a sudden be expected to somehow develop the mindset and financial habits of a philanthropist? Surely not. This is simply the opposite extreme on the spectrum of poverty and riches. One surely cannot expect a person who had been striving after power and money as their sole priority in life, and who had likely caused others pain and grief in the process of acquiring the greatest amount of these commodities, of all the individuals in the world who partake in the global economy, who depend upon earning and possessing money to acquire things, since money is utilized almost universally as the measure of value for things, to somehow become a generous, selfless, charitable saint? Perhaps we should consider attempting to empathize with the powerful elites, who we blame for so much of the corruption and division and economic disparity and all the other problems in the world, and ask ourselves if we could truly do any better, or be able to release ourselves from the addiction and to power and gaining more control and financial dominance that these individuals clearly are bound to. Now, that's all I had written on that back then in 2023, whatever it was that I said at the start, whenever the date was that I wrote that. It probably could go on, but hey, history is also never quite finished, so I'm going to leave it just there, because that's actually where it was left. And so that is the recording of what I wrote on that particular date in the past. Goodbye.